In June of 1993, Michael Jordan stood at the absolute peak of professional basketball. 3 consecutive championships, 3 consecutive finals MVP awards, a scoring title, an Olympic gold medal, worldwide fame that had transformed a basketball player into a global symbol. He was only 30 years old, and less than 4 months after winning his 3rd championship, Michael Jordan suddenly walked away. The explanation seemed understandable. He was exhausted. He had lost the desire to compete. And after the murder of his father, basketball no longer felt the same. But another story began spreading almost immediately. Jordan's gambling had already attracted national attention. The NBA had been investigating his activities, and only 2 days after he announced his retirement, the league formally closed that investigation. So was Michael Jordan simply finished with basketball? Or was the most famous retirement in sports history hiding something much bigger? This is the mystery behind Michael Jordan's first retirement. By 1993, Michael Jordan was no longer just the best player in the NBA. He had become the face of the sport itself. His Chicago Bulls had defeated the Los Angeles Lakers in 1991, the Portland Trail Blazers in 1992, and the Phoenix Suns in 1993. Against Phoenix, Jordan averaged more than 40 points per game, helping Chicago complete the first NBA three-peat since the Boston Celtics dynasty decades earlier. Basketball had conquered America, and Michael Jordan had conquered basketball. His shoes were everywhere. His commercials were everywhere. Children wanted to move like him, dress like him, and, for just a moment, believed they could fly like him. He was competitive to an almost legendary degree. Teammates said he could turn nearly anything into a contest. Card games, golf matches, practice drills, even small personal challenges that most people would immediately forget. For Jordan, competition rarely seemed to end when the final buzzer sounded. And that competitive nature would eventually become an important part of a very different story. Because long before he retired, Michael Jordan's gambling had begun making headlines. In the early 1990s, Jordan's name appeared in several situations involving large gambling payments and controversial associates. One of the most public involved James "Slim" Bowler. A check signed by Jordan for $57,000 became part of a federal court case. Jordan eventually testified that the money represented gambling losses from golf and poker. That admission mattered. This was no longer simply a story about small wagers among wealthy athletes. It showed that Jordan was gambling for amounts large enough to attract serious public attention. However, there was an important distinction. There was no established evidence that Jordan was betting on Chicago Bulls games, wagering against his team, or deliberately affecting NBA results. Gambling itself was not automatically an NBA violation, but relationships with gamblers and questions about whether anyone involved also wagered on professional basketball could present a serious concern for the league. The NBA examined Jordan's activities. It found no violation serious enough to warrant punishment. But the story did not disappear. Then, during the 1993 Eastern Conference Finals, Jordan provided the media with another explosive headline. The Bulls had traveled to New York to face the Knicks. Chicago lost Game 1. Before Game 2, Michael Jordan traveled approximately 2 hours away to gamble in Atlantic City. Jordan said he had gone with his father and friends and left around 11 o'clock that night. However, a newspaper report cited unnamed witnesses who claimed Jordan was still at the casino at approximately 2:30 in the morning. The next day, Chicago lost again. Suddenly, the Bulls were down 2-0, and Jordan's nighttime trip became a national controversy. Was the greatest player alive distracted? Was his gambling interfering with basketball? Was this private entertainment or evidence of a larger problem? Jordan pushed back against the criticism. And on the court, he answered in the way he usually did. The Bulls won the next 4 games and eliminated New York. Jordan scored 54 points in Game 4. Chicago then defeated Phoenix for its 3rd consecutive championship. For most athletes, that would have ended the discussion. But while Jordan was celebrating another title, the league was still examining questions surrounding his gambling relationships. NBA. Commissioner David Stern publicly stated that he did not believe Jordan had a gambling problem, although the broader review had not yet completely concluded. Then Jordan's life changed in a way that had nothing to do with basketball. On July 23, 1993, Michael Jordan's father, James Jordan Sr., was killed during an apparent robbery in North Carolina. Michael and his father had been extraordinarily close. James Jordan was frequently seen with his son during some of the defining moments of Michael's career. After Chicago's first championship in 1991, cameras captured them celebrating together. James was more than a parent watching from the sidelines. He was one of Michael's closest confidants, and according to accounts from the Bulls organization, Michael had already discussed the possibility of leaving basketball and pursuing professional baseball, a sport his father deeply loved. The death devastated Jordan. It also produced some of the ugliest speculation surrounding the retirement mystery. Certain commentators attempted to connect James Jordan's murder with Michael's gambling debts, but investigators established no credible evidence supporting that connection. It is one of the most important lines this documentary must draw. Jordan's gambling history is documented. The theory that his father was killed because of it is not. Those are not the same thing. Only months after winning his third consecutive championship, Michael Jordan entered a crowded news conference in Deerfield, Illinois. Then he announced that he was retiring from basketball. He had completed only 9 NBA seasons. He was 30 years old, he was healthy, and he was still widely considered the greatest player in the world. Jordan said he had lost the motivation to continue. He said there were no remaining basketball challenges that truly excited him. He also spoke about his father and the emotional toll of the previous months. The announcement stunned the sports world. The NBA records the retirement as occurring on October 6th, fewer than 4 months after Jordan helped Chicago defeat Phoenix in the finals. At face value, the explanation was believable. Jordan had spent years under pressure almost no athlete had ever experienced. Every game was an event. Every movement was scrutinized. Every failure became national news. Perhaps he was simply exhausted. But then came the detail that would keep the conspiracy alive for decades. 2 days later, the NBA announced that its gambling investigation had concluded. October 6th, Michael Jordan retires. October 8th, the NBA closes its investigation. The league said it had uncovered no evidence that Jordan violated NBA gambling rules. David Stern said the retirement and investigation were unrelated. But for conspiracy believers, the timing seemed almost too perfect. Their theory was simple. What if Michael Jordan had not voluntarily retired? What if the NBA had discovered something damaging, but publicly suspending its biggest star would have harmed the league, its television partners, its sponsors, and the entire Jordan business empire? Instead of announcing a suspension, perhaps Jordan and David Stern reached a private agreement. Jordan would temporarily leave basketball. The NBA would avoid an international scandal. And after enough time passed, Jordan could quietly return. It is a powerful theory because it connects several real facts. Jordan gambled for substantial amounts. He associated with people whose backgrounds created uncomfortable questions. The NBA investigated him. His retirement happened during that investigation, and the investigation officially ended only 2 days later. But here is where the distinction between suspicious timing and actual evidence becomes crucial. No suspension letter has ever surfaced. No league memorandum has appeared. No owner, attorney, union representative, or NBA executive with direct knowledge has produced documentation proving a private punishment. The theory explains the timeline, but it does not prove the agreement. And there is another complication. Michael Jordan did not disappear. He began one of the most difficult athletic experiments imaginable. On February 7, 1994, Jordan signed a minor league baseball contract with the Chicago White Sox organization. He eventually joined the Birmingham Barons, Chicago's Double-A affiliate. This was not an exhibition tour. It was not a celebrity softball league. Jordan played professional baseball nearly every day. He traveled on minor league buses. He faced pitchers who had spent their lives developing breaking balls and fastballs against players with years of professional experience. Jordan had not played competitive baseball since high school. The results reflected that challenge. He finished the season with a .202 batting average, 3 home runs, 51 runs batted in, and 30 stolen bases. He played 127 games for Birmingham. Critics laughed at the batting average, but baseball professionals saw something more complicated. Jordan improved. He worked relentlessly. He endured the embarrassment of failure in public despite having nothing left to prove financially or athletically. He was also one of only a handful of Double-A players that season to combine at least 50 runs batted in with 30 stolen bases. That matters to the retirement mystery. If baseball was merely a stage cover for a secret punishment, Jordan selected an extraordinarily demanding cover. He could have traveled, played golf, or remained out of public view. Instead, he subjected himself to daily professional competition in a sport where his fame could not protect him from a 90-mile-per-hour fastball. Consider what a secret suspension would have required. David Stern would have needed the cooperation or silence of league lawyers, Chicago Bulls ownership, Jordan's representatives, possibly the Players Union, potentially television partners and other NBA executives, and perhaps investigators who had already examined the gambling allegations. The punishment would have removed the league's biggest financial attraction without producing a paper trail, a credible first-hand witness, or a later confession. And the secret would have remained protected for more than 3 decades. That is not impossible, but it is an enormous conspiracy. There is also evidence that Jordan was discussing retirement before his father's death and before the public announcement. The Bulls' own historical account says Jordan had spoken with teammates about walking away during the spring of 1993 and had discussed professional baseball with his father. That does not completely eliminate every unanswered question, but it weakens the idea that the retirement was suddenly invented as punishment after the gambling investigation. During baseball's labor dispute, Jordan began spending more time around the Bulls. He returned to the practice facility. He competed with NBA players again. And something began changing. Basketball no longer seemed like the burden he had escaped. It began feeling like home. On March 18, 1995, Jordan's representatives issued one of the most famous announcements in sports history. It contained only 2 words, "I'm back." The following day, Jordan played against the Indiana Pacers, ending a retirement that had lasted approximately 17 months. The initial return was not perfect. Chicago lost that game. Jordan wore number 45, and the Bulls were eventually eliminated by Orlando in the playoffs. But the following season, Jordan returned fully. The Bulls won 72 games. They captured another championship, then another, then another. Michael Jordan's career ended with 6 championships in 6 finals appearances, and the retirement that threatened to interrupt his legacy became part of the legend. Michael Jordan gambled for large amounts. Fact. Michael Jordan's gambling relationships were investigated by the NBA. Fact. He traveled to Atlantic City during the 1993 playoffs. Fact. He retired while the league's investigation remained publicly unresolved. Fact. The NBA closed that investigation 2 days later. Fact. The NBA secretly suspended him. Unproven. The official evidence available today does not establish that Michael Jordan was forced out of basketball. The gambling controversy gives the theory a factual foundation. The strange timing gives it emotional power. But the missing piece has always remained the same: proof. Perhaps Michael Jordan told the truth. Perhaps he was mentally exhausted, devastated by his father's death, and ready to chase the baseball dream they had discussed together. Perhaps the real story was not a secret punishment, but the emotional breaking point of a man who had spent years being treated as something more than human. Or perhaps important conversations occurred behind closed doors that the public will never hear. More than 30 years later, people are still asking the same question. What really happened behind Michael Jordan's first retirement? Tell us what you believe in the comments. If you like videos like these, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And remember, history tells us what happened. Behind the story asks why.